My boss had never called me into his office trembling until the day he handed me a one-way ticket and told me to take my daughter and disappear. That's not how mornings usually sound in my world. Most days start with a grocery store coffee, the hum of our old fridge, and my 8-year-old Lily asking if her robot napkin gets armor or a cape today. I draw the cape. She grins. We high-five. It's our budget version of normal, and it keeps the wolves outside the door. Seattle was still wet from an overnight drizzle when we left for school. I watched the crossing guard wave Lily through the morning traffic, tiny backpack bouncing, hair in 2 lopsided braids, because I'm better with spreadsheets than with elastics. I told her to be brave in math. She told me to be brave in my big person job. We traded smiles like a promise. By 9:15, I was at Northbridge Capital Advisors, the downtown tower where my badge beeped me into a life that felt steadier than anything I'd had in years. Operations Coordinator. Nothing fancy. Approvals, reconciliations, notes that say, please clarify. I live by rules and timestamps, because rules and timestamps don't lie. The elevator chimed. I stepped onto our floor and the air shifted. The usual chatter was gone. Desks hummed, but voices were low, clipped. 2 men I didn't recognize stood near the executive hallway, suits clean, stances military still. They weren't clients. They didn't pretend to be. I felt the prickle you get when a storm is close, but the sky hasn't darkened yet. My computer lit up with a flood of routine, vendor queries, travel receipts, a dormant account reactivation I'd flagged 2 days ago with a polite need additional support, and then the internal phone flashed. Graham Porter's assistant. Come now. No calendar invite, no reason. Graham Porter, our senior director, was the kind of man who could make silence feel like performance. I'd seen him glide past my desk 100 times without looking up. He did not do unannounced. He did not do messy. He was messy today. He shut his office door, turned the lock, and looked at me like a man measuring the distance between a spark and a fuse. His tie was looser than I'd ever seen it. His knuckles were pale around a sealed envelope with my name written fast across the front. Not my last name. My first name. Maya. Go home, he whispered, voice sandpaper thin. Pack a bag. Take Lily. Leave the city. That's what he said, exactly. For orders, soft and final. He slid the envelope across the desk, as if it might explode if it moved too fast. I didn't touch it yet. I watched his mouth, the little tremor at the corner, the way his eyes kept shifting to the window like he expected it to shatter. What kind of job asks a single mom to vanish before nightfall? The thought dropped into my chest and sat there, heavy and cold. I asked him what this was. He didn't answer the way a boss answers. He answered like a father at a hospital bed. Not an explanation, an instruction. We were out of time. He said this is not a game, and something about the way he shaped the words erased my impulse to argue. The building's air system kicked on. Papers fluttered at the edge of his desk. Somewhere in the hallway, a laugh cracked and then went silent, like someone had remembered where they were. Graham leaned forward, lowering his voice further, names I didn't recognize, a phrase that sounded like, they noticed, and a number. 21 hours. By this time tomorrow, you can't be here, he said, not looking at me when he said it. I finally took the envelope. It had weight, the kind of weight that isn't about paper. He reached for the blinds and tilted them. The men in suits at the end of the hallway were still there, distant shapes through slats. He told me not to call anyone. Not family. Not friends. He told me to leave my desk as if I was going to lunch, to smile at whoever I passed, to walk, not run. I don't understand, I said, but it came out like a breath more than a sentence. You will, he said. Just go. He unlocked the door and stepped aside. No dramatic goodbye. No movie speech. Just a man who looked like he'd already endured 2 nights without sleep and was ready to carry one more secret if it kept a child alive. I put the envelope into my tote and palmed my badge. My legs felt too aware of themselves, like they belonged to someone taller and calmer. Out in the corridor, keyboards clicked, screens glowed, and the 2 strangers didn't look at me as I passed. I kept the pace of a woman heading to the cafe downstairs for soup. In the elevator, My reflection stared back with that same steady office face I practice. Competent, invisible, harmless. The doors closed on the 32nd floor and opened 31 floors later on a city that suddenly looked like a map I didn't trust. At the lobby turnstiles, I tapped out and walked into the drizzle. The envelope pressed against my hip through the canvas. Lily was at school. I was on a sidewalk that had always felt safe. I checked the time. 21 hours is a lot of minutes until you start counting them. I took one step toward the curb, then another, and realized the ground under me had changed even though it looked the same. Whatever was inside that envelope had already rearranged my life. I didn't know the shape yet. I only knew this. If a man like Graham Porter locked his door, shook in front of me, and told me to run, then something was coming that would not ask for permission. I tightened my grip on the tote and headed for the parking garage. I would read the envelope at home, behind our bolted door, with the robot napkin still in Lily's lunchbox and the fridge humming like a small, stubborn heartbeat. And if I was overreacting? Good. Overreacting is how mothers live long enough to apologize. Would you have walked out or demanded answers? I didn't breathe until the deadbolt slid home. The fridge hummed. Rain tapped the window like it wanted in. I stood in the middle of our small living room with the envelope in my hands and the kind of stillness you feel before you open a hospital result. I tore the seal. Paper rasped. A boarding pass slid out first, one way to Bozeman, Montana. Flight time 8:10 p.m. tonight. No return, no seat selection, just exit. Beneath it, a small black smartphone, heavy for its size, still wrapped in plastic. When I peeled it back, the screen lit with a plain, cold contact card. Call this line. No number shown. No apps. No history. The last item wasn't paper. It was a photograph. Lily, standing outside her school doors. The neon mural behind her, 3 dolphins and a sun, made it obvious the picture was taken this morning. Her braids were uneven, my crime. She was smiling the way kids smile at nothing and everything. The corner of the photo was bent, like someone had pressed it too hard with a thumb. There was a note on white printer paper, ink smudged as if written fast. It told me they knew about the file I accessed. It told me to leave the city before nightfall. It said if I stayed, both of us would be taken. Not threatened. Taken. The word looked heavier than the rest, like a door welded shut. A mother's body learns to make decisions while the mind is still arguing. I grabbed our go bag from the closet, the one I always promise I'll update and never do, then my passport, Lily's birth certificate, our health cards, and the little envelope of cash from the spice wreck. The robot napkin drawings, all folded and rubber banded, went in too. I kept the black phone powered off. My personal phone pulsed with work emails like nothing had changed. Who takes a photo of an 8-year-old to make a point? I locked up and drove to Lily's school with my jaw clenched so hard it felt wired. The drizzle had thickened into real rain, blurring brake lights into red smears. I parked a block away to avoid the front cameras. Paranoia? Maybe. Or maybe it was the first sensible thing I'd done all day. Inside, the front desk woman looked at me over her glasses, friendly and unaware. I kept my voice light, my face warmer than my blood. Surprise day. Mom-daughter thing. She smiled at that. A line on a clipboard, a laminated visitor badge that stuck to my sweater crookedly, and then a call to Lily's teacher. Footsteps. Tiny ones, quick and bright. Lily ran down the hall, backpack loose, cheeks flushed. Her eyes found me and did the thing they do, wide, safe, believing. I could have fallen to my knees right there. Instead, I crouched and hugged her like we were about to hop a ferry, not the state line. Are we going somewhere? She whispered into my shoulder, breath warm, curiosity sparkling. Just us, I said, keeping it almost playful. A little adventure. She wanted to know if she could bring her cardboard robot. Of course. Robots travel light. I signed the sign-out sheet with a hand that tried to shake and didn't. That felt like a win. We walked past the fish tank in the lobby, the one that always looks too clean to be real. Outside, the rain had cooled the air into something that smelled like wet pavement and pine needles. A delivery truck idled half a block down, white paint pebbled with water. Doors clicked. Someone laughed. Nothing unusual, and yet the world felt staged, like the props had been arranged to hide the wires. I buckled Lily in and handed her a granola bar to buy myself 30 seconds of silent thinking. Home, grab clothes, leave. Simple path. Except the photo said home wasn't ours anymore. The note said time was moving faster than I could feel it. The ticket said Bozeman, not a place I'd ever planned to pronounce out loud. I started the engine. The wipers swept. In the rear view, parents came and went with umbrellas and tired smiles. I imagined the distance from a raised phone to my child's face. 10 feet? 5? Closer? Lily kicked her heels against the seat, happy drum beats. Does my robot get a cape today? She asked. 2 capes, I said, and made myself smile for real. Fear leaves fingerprints if you let it. I pulled into traffic with the practiced patience of a city driver, signaling, checking, pausing at the four-way like a person who has nothing to hide. The black phone was in my tote, dark and waiting. My own phone began to buzz with a number I didn't recognize, then stopped, then buzzed again. I let it. We turned toward the duplex through a maze of streets I knew by heart. Every light seemed too slow. Every passing face looked like a potential witness or a mask. But Lily was humming a song about planets, and that sound anchored me. I could be terrified and still be her mother. That was the deal. By the time we reached our block, I knew what I had to do. Get in, pack fast, and keep us moving before the sky turned black and the boarding gate called my name over a speaker that never learned to pronounce it right. I parked under the maple tree that leaves yellow stains on our hood every fall. The rain softened to a mist. Somewhere, a car door shut with a soft thunk. Ordinary, unremarkable. I kept my smile, took Lily's hand, and told her we were playing the quiet game. As we walked to our door, the world pretended to be normal. I pretended right back until a shadow shifted in a window across the street, and something in my chest whispered that normal had just ended. Would you have called the police, or grabbed your child and kept walking? The shadow in the window blinked out, like a watcher deciding to breathe. I kept my body loose, keys easy in my hand, the way you do when your child is beside you and your fear can't show its teeth. Inside, I slid the chain, clicked the deadbolt, and told Lily we were playing quiet turtles. She giggled, which hurt and helped at the same time. The room smelled like wet coats and laundry soap. I moved fast, 2 changes of clothes each, toothbrushes, Lily's pajamas with the tiny moons, the cardboard robot tucked on top like a guardian. Documents, cash, charger, granola bars. I left the frame pictures. Glass is loud and useless. While I packed, a thought kept thumping. I'd seen a dark crossover behind us earlier, the kind that blends into traffic and keeps a steady 2-car distance. I'd changed lanes. It changed lanes. I'd exited once for no reason. It exited, then vanished, then reappeared in my mirror 3 streets later. Not proof. Enough. I took the black phone from the envelope and pressed the power button. It vibrated once, screen waking to a single line of text already waiting. Do not call anyone. Do not text. Reach the airport. No greeting. No signature. Like a pulse tapped on a submarine hull. My personal phone lit up with an unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again with that steady, patient tone people use when they know you'll break first. I answered without speaking. A woman's voice, level and close to my ear, told me not to approach the front windows. She told me there were 2 men outside on the street, one at the corner and one sitting in a car with a hoodie up. She told me to go out the back stairwell now, 1 bag each, and not to stop for anything that wasn't breathing. Her tone was calm in a way that made my ribs feel like a cage. I asked who she was. She didn't say. She said the word extraction like she'd said it 100 times. She told me to put my phone on airplane mode and leave it behind the couch. She said to take the black phone and not to make a sound on the stairs. Then the line clicked dead. I looked at Lily. She looked at me. Children read faces like weather forecasts. I made the sky clear and warm. We shouldered our bags. I tucked the black phone into my jacket and slid my personal phone under the couch cushion, screen face down like a sleeping eye. At the back door, I pressed my ear to the wood and listened. Nothing but the building's breath, the boiler, the faint patter of rain, someone's TV leaking laughter through a wall. I eased the door open. The stairwell smelled like dust and old paint. My heart slowed on purpose. Fast hearts make loud feet. We moved. Lily's sneakers whispered on concrete. On the landing above, a man's voice drifted down, low and irritated, speaking into a radio. 2 words cut through, the target and the child. The echo folded around us. Lily froze. I put my hand on her back and felt the quick drum of her small heart. When fear met fear, mine stepped aside. We slipped down the last flight and into the alley. Rain beaded on the trash can lids like fish scales. I could see the street through the chain link, 2 cars, a pedestrian with a hood, the corner man described by the voice. He wasn't looking our way. Not yet. We moved along the brick, keeping to the stacked recycling bins, and reached the gap behind our building where my car waited under a crooked power line. I opened the back door and Lily climbed in quiet as a cat. I slid behind the wheel and didn't start the engine yet. Instead, I watched the mirrors. The corner man checked his phone. The hooded driver at the curb lifted a coffee cup. Normal, normal, normal. My hands found the keys. I turned them. The engine coughed alive like it had something to say. I backed out slow and let the alley spill me onto the side street away from the watchers. No hard turns. No panic. Panic is a flare. We drove 3 blocks, then 4, then turned left into a grid of houses where everyone's porch light was the same warm yellow. I took us toward the freeway like a person going to a dentist appointment she didn't want. On the ramp, I saw it. The dark crossover slid into my side mirror, a patient shadow 2 lanes over. Not close. Not far. Just there. I adjusted speed. It adjusted. I changed lanes. It changed. Lily played with the robot's flaps and whispered that the robot had 2 capes today. Good, I said, watching the mirror. Good. I took the next exit, looped back, and merged again. The crossover disappeared behind a semi, then returned, steady as a metronome. I wanted to believe it was nothing. The photograph in my bag wouldn't let me. The airport signs rose out of rain and freeway glare. I stayed with the slow lane, followed arrows like they were commandments, and slid into short-term parking near the far end where no one likes to walk. I killed the engine and listened. The black phone vibrated once in my pocket, a single buzz like a tap on the shoulder. I didn't answer. It didn't ring again. We moved with a small family's rhythm, bag straps, hand squeezes, checking pockets twice because twice feels like control. Inside the terminal, warm air hit my face and tasted like recycled coffee and soap. The departure boards glowed blue and indifferent. Bozeman 8:10 p.m. On time. Bless indifference. At security, I kept our story ready. Mother, daughter, quick trip, a surprise. The line inched. A toddler cried. An agent joked about shoes. Ordinary wrapped itself around us like a blanket that didn't quite reach our feet. When it was our turn, shoes off, trays through, I watched the conveyor as if it were a heartbeat monitor. Our bags emerged. Nothing beeped. A small miracle. At the gate, I sat with Lily's head on my shoulder and counted the people who could be anything. Baseball cap, business suit, backpacker with headphones. The crossover couldn't follow us here. The men outside our building didn't belong past TSA. That's what I told myself while the black phone lay heavy and silent. Boarding was called. We stood. We walked down the jet bridge, that narrow tunnel where choices harden into momentum. The air smelled like aluminum and rain. I buckled Lily in, tucked her robot under her arm, and kissed the top of her head. Her hair smelled like apple shampoo and safety I couldn't promise. As the plane door thudded shut and the cabin lights dimmed, the black phone vibrated again, 1 buzz, then a text on the locked screen, "Do not speak on board. Wait for Bozeman." No name, no signature, just the next step. The engines roared. The ground fell away. Relief didn't. Would you have trusted a voice with no face? The wheels hit the runway like knuckles on a table. Lily stirred against my arm and blinked at the window, where Montana looked like a painting someone forgot to frame. Low mountains, hard light, Open country that made Seattle feel like a closet. The seatbelt light chimed. People stood like they always do, halfway patient, halfway wild. I waited. The black phone was a stone in my pocket. The last message, "Wait for Bozeman," buzzed like a rule in my bones. When our row emptied, I gathered Lily, the robot, the tote, the ordinary pieces that still pretended to be our life, and we moved up the aisle with a rhythm that didn't invite questions. The terminal was small and honest. No rush, no luxury shops, just a cafe that smelled like burnt espresso and a sign pointing to baggage claim with an arrow that didn't lie. I guided Lily into the women's restroom, locked a stall, and finally powered on the black phone. The screen lit, blank but certain. I pressed the single contact, "Call this line." 2 rings. A man answered. No hello, just a voice I could picture without seeing late 40s, sandpaper calm, no wasted words. He told me to exit the terminal now, south curb, no luggage claim, no conversations. He told me a dark pickup would pull up, that I should not speak until he spoke first. The call ended like a door closing. I held the phone to my chest for one breath. Then I flushed the empty toilet to justify the time and washed Lily's hands, because normal rituals soften sharp edges. She asked if we were meeting a friend. I told her we were meeting help. Her shoulders relaxed at that word. Mine did not. Outside, the air bit clean and cold. My breath showed. The sky stretched in a way city skies forget how to do. We stood near the south curb where the concrete was stained with old oil and a single gull complained overhead like it had personal grievances. A dark pickup rolled up as if summoned by the weather. No music. No bumper stickers. The driver's window slid down. A weathered face, lines like map routes, steady eyes that didn't blink too much. Maya Collins, he said, like a fact he'd checked twice. Every mother has a list in her head, what to do if, who to call when, the price of being wrong. My list unspooled in a second. I glanced for cameras, exits, other cars. I watched his hands, steady on the wheel, clean knuckles, a faint white scar near the thumb that belonged to a man who worked more than he spoke. "Get in," he said, voice even. "We need to move." I waited for the nightmare tells, the twitch, the rush, the too sweet smile of a liar. They didn't come. Instead, I saw the smallest flicker, his left eye cut to the rearview mirror, professional, checking angles I hadn't noticed yet. Not a shark. A sentinel. I opened the back door. Lily climbed in, robot under her arm, eyes wide the way kids' eyes go when they are deciding if a stranger is Santa or the dentist. He turned just enough to see her and gave the single nod that adults trade when a child is in the room, gentle, contained. I strapped her in, hands steady because they had to be. In the passenger seat, the upholstery smelled like dust and winter pine. He pulled away without a jerk, not announcing speed. The airport fell behind us like a postcard slipping out of a book. He kept his eyes on the road for a full minute before speaking, as if words were something to earn. "I'm Ethan," he said. "You don't talk yet. I'll explain when it's clean." Clean. The word did more for my breathing than any apology. We took a service road that ran parallel to the main highway, then cut under it. The tires hummed on rough concrete. Through the side mirror, I spotted a white SUV gliding onto the ramp we'd just avoided. Maybe coincidence. Maybe not. Ethan watched it too, without moving his head. He drifted behind a semi, let 2 pickups pass, then slid off at a farm exit that looked like it led to nothing but cows and sky. I kept my hands knotted in my lap and counted my pulse. Lily whispered to her robot about snow. I wanted to turn and remind her to keep the capes flat so they wouldn't bend. The urge to mother and the urge to survive wrestled in the same small space. I chose quiet. Half a mile later, Ethan reached to the dash and pressed a button that killed the interior dome light. Good. He thought like corners, not like headlines. He checked the mirror again and let out a breath I wouldn't have heard if I hadn't been listening for it. He spoke without drama. "Graham sent you," I said in my head, testing the feel of it before daring it out loud. He answered the thought anyway. "Graham trusted you," he said, eyes still on the road. "That's why you're alive." The truth of it stung. I pictured Graham's hands pushing the envelope across the desk, the way his voice had frayed on the edges. The way he hadn't said goodbye. I swallowed the questions chewing at my throat. Who are they? How much danger? How do we end this? I held them like hot coins until they cooled. We passed a stand of trees black against the snowfields. The mountains were more shadow than shape now, the sky deepening into that blue that hides things on purpose. Ethan took another turn onto a narrower road, unmarked, the kind locals used to cut miles off a drive. The pickup felt like part of the landscape, not a bullet through it. 2 rules, he said. You follow my voice. You keep the child inside your reach. That's it. I nodded, small, because I was already doing both. He reached into the center console and pulled out a folded wool blanket. He passed it to me without looking. I tucked it over Lily. She pretended to be asleep to get away with listening. That's my girl. In the windshield, the world thinned. Fewer houses, more dark. Fewer lights, more stars. The city had been replaced by distance, and in that distance a choice waited with crossed arms. Believe this man with the steady eyes. Or don't, and take the kind of risk that changes the shape of grief. I kept my voice low, finally breaking the rule because motherhood is its own jurisdiction. Do you know my daughter's name? He didn't turn. Lily, he said. We keep her breathing. Then we talk. He had it right. That answer, simple and exact, clicked something open in me. Trust doesn't arrive like a parade. It arrives like a small door you choose to walk through. I looked back at Lily. Her lashes lay dark on her cheeks. The robot's cardboard edges pressed funny dents into her pajama sleeve. My throat tightened and then went quiet again. We crossed a narrow bridge where the river sounded like broken glass sliding under ice. The road beyond climbed a little, then leveled. In the distance, a single light winked on and off like a signal. Ethan didn't speed up for it. He didn't slow down either. He drove like a person walking through a dark room he'd already memorized. Seatbelt tight, he said, almost gentle. After this turn, no phones, no names, no questions until I say, we're not alone out here. Not alone. The words could have meant danger. They also meant we had help I couldn't see yet. I chose to let them mean both. He made the turn. Gravel crackled under the tires. Pines closed around us, tall and silent. The pickup slid deeper into a road that wasn't on any app one trusted. Would you have stepped into that truck? We drove on, and the last of the airport glow bled away behind us. Somewhere ahead, an answer waited with the light on. Gravel skittered under the tires like dry bones. The road narrowed, the trees leaned in, and the kind of silence that lives far from cities settled around us. Ethan drove like a metronome, unhurried and precise. My mind tried to race ahead. He wouldn't let it. He parceled truth in pieces my breath could carry. We're going to a farmhouse, he said finally, still watching the dark. It's off-grid and cleaner than the truck you're in. He didn't call it safe. He called it clean. That told me what mattered. Past a cattle gate, the land opened to a low house with a steel roof and no neighbors. One window glowed, not bright, just enough to say someone had planned for our arrival. We rolled to a stop with the engine idling like a steady heart. He scanned, then killed the lights. The world didn't change much. It had already been mostly night. Inside, the air was warm and smelled like coffee that had boiled twice. Maps lined one wall, pins and red thread stitching towns to routes and names I couldn't see from the door. A heavy table wore stacks of files, drives labeled in careful block letters, and a laptop wired into a small forest of comms gear. Not a rescue. A command post. Ethan motioned me to a chair and poured water into a tin cup. He waited until I drank, as if human things had to happen before hard ones. When I nodded, he began. He and Graham weren't just colleagues who nodded in elevators. Years ago, they'd worked together on a joint federal task force that watched money the way rangers watch fire, quiet, constant, always a little afraid of wind. The problem wasn't criminals stashing cash in dirty corners. The problem was clean firms with polished logos that let blood money rinse through their pipes and come out shining. 3.5 years ago, he said, Graham got too close. No theatrics, no gore. Just a fact, someone he loved was taken from him for asking the right question in the wrong house. After that, he became a quiet blade. He stayed at Northbridge because you cannot expose a river by standing on the shore. You have to step in and learn its currents. He showed me a printed screen from our internal system. My notes sat there in plain English. Dormant account reactivated. Transfer unusual. Please provide support. Dated 2 days ago. My signature. My mistake? No. My line in the sand. That account, he said, tapping the paper, is not random. It's the spine. Most of the network rests on it. Shells feed it, shells hide it, shells bleed out from it. People have died without ever hearing its name. I saw again the number that had bothered me, $23, 046, 912, arriving like a comet from overseas into an account that had slept for years. Old bones don't leap up and run unless someone tells them to. I'd asked a question. I'd also clicked approved after additional support received because the system gave me a neat answer with 4 attachments and a manager's sign-off from a director I didn't recognize. It had felt clean. It wasn't. When you flagged and then approved it, he said, you touched their main vein. Your credentials lit up on a board they watch. It told them 2 things. 1, we were closer than they thought. 2, you were brave enough to notice. His mouth tightened. Brave gets misread as dangerous by people who profit from fear. He didn't have to say the rest. The photo of Lily, taken an arm's length from her school doors, explained exactly how they respond to dangerous. I stared at the paper until the letters blurred. I had done my job right, and now my daughter slept under a stranger's wool blanket because right and safe had split apart. How do you make peace with that? Do you ever? Ethan slid a small notebook toward me, the kind reporters used before phones learned to listen. On it, quick sketches of company names, arrows to bank codes, dates that formed a rhythm if you knew the beat. He pointed to a thin line drawn between 2 boxes. That reactivation wasn't random timing. A senior figure needed to move money before a larger play. Your note jammed his cluck. I felt the shape of the decision they'd made about me, remove the eyes that had seen too much. A simple calculus. A monstrous one. My fingers found the edge of the table and held on. He told me why Graham had hired me. Not because I am brilliant, not because I am fearless. Because I am boring where it matters and stubborn everywhere else. I ask for receipts. I follow rules without worshipping them. I tap the brakes when a story looks too smooth. He needed someone who still believed that numbers confess if you sit with them long enough. I tried to laugh and failed. That's all it took? I asked. A note in a system? He didn't smile. Sometimes the smallest audit is a siren in a crooked room. He showed me a timeline. A prior dormant reactivation 18 months ago. Silence. Smaller transfers and patterns that looked like stitches. Then last week, the big one. The one that finally forced them to move faster than they liked. The day after I asked my question, Graham's home alarm tripped twice with no one at the door. The day after that, a man in a delivery uniform tried to access my building without a package. The day after that, the photo of Lily existed. The knowledge settled into me cold and like iron. I had stepped on a wire I couldn't see, and they had felt it in their bones. My mind went where all mothers' minds go. We can run. We can disappear. New names. New school. A long life of caution and grocery lists. But while I considered the escape, another thought slipped in like light under a door. I could help finish this. Not as a hero. As the person I already am, a woman who won't look away when something is wrong. Would you have kept your head down? I whispered to myself, the question hanging between exhaustion and clarity. Ethan's eyes softened in that way calm men allow once an hour. He told me the task force had been collecting threads for years. We're nearly there, he said. Your flag wasn't noise. It was the note that tuned the whole instrument. He didn't name the architect behind the account. Not yet. He said the name needed context, proof, a careful presentation I would believe, because I could read a ledger like a diary. He nodded to the next room, where a laptop waited with a single file queued at the first frame. Graham recorded something for you, he added, voice low. Before the envelope. My heart climbed into my throat and held there. I looked toward the doorway, where the glow from the laptop painted a thin strip of light on the floorboards like a path. Outside, the wind pressed its hand against the house. Inside, the maps didn't move. I touched Lily's shoulder where she dozed on the couch, the robot tucked under her arm like a tired knight. She didn't stir. Good. Let her sleep while the adults changed the weather. Ethan rested his hand on the table, close enough to count the scuffs on his knuckles. You deserve to know who you're up against, he said. But once you know, you don't know. We keep going, we finish. I stood. My legs remembered how. The room felt like the edge of a cliff and a bridge at the same time. He gestured to the doorway and the waiting screen. Ready? He asked. I wasn't. I was determined. Show me, I said, and the farmhouse seemed to hold its breath. The laptop fan whirred and Graham's face filled the screen, bruised cheekbone, cracked lip, eyes that looked like they'd been awake for a week. The video timestamp stung. This morning, an hour before he handed me the envelope. He didn't waste seconds on greetings. If you're watching this, he said, voice rough, it means they moved faster than I did. The room seemed to lean in. Ethan stood near the door, listening with his whole posture, the way professionals do when words might be the last map they get. Lily slept on the couch, robot under her arm, small breaths catching on the edges. I wanted to cover her ears and didn't. Truth doesn't care about blankets. Graham spoke like a man who had practiced the order of the sentences. He told me he'd chosen me on purpose. Not because I was impressive. Because I was predictable, ethical in a way that made the right choice even when unseen. I needed someone who still asks small questions, he said. Small questions break big things. He brought up a slide, the dormant account I'd flagged. My note. The transfer line with numbers that had kept me awake before I knew why. Behind it, a lattice of shell companies with names that sounded like furniture stores and hiking clubs, all feeding the same hollow center. Then he drew the circle tighter. A set of charities with clean websites and smiling children. A consulting group with a made-for-TV founder. A pack built like a pressure washer. Every line returned to one spine. He tapped it once, soft and angry. His name, Graham said, and the screen froze on his mouth for a breath, like even the file hesitated. The word landed heavy. Governor Marcus Lang. The farmhouse air changed temperature. It wasn't drama, it was recognition. The name lived in headlines and interviews, ribbon cuttings and town halls, a man who shook hands like a promise and talked about integrity while cameras loved him. I'd seen him on TV telling kids to work hard and make good choices. You don't want your monsters to be fluent in bedtime stories. He built a river, Graham continued. Money goes in one end as rot and comes out the other scented like lavender. He moves it through firms like ours, then into projects that look like hope. Abroad, it buys knives. At home, it buys silence. My throat burned. I could hear the scrape of Ethan's boot on the wood, the far-off hiss of the wind at the eaves. The map wall behind me felt hot with pins. We've been pulling at threads, Graham said. Your flag turned the fabric. He smiled then, a tired, crooked thing that looked like gratitude and regret sharing a chair. I'm sorry I put you in this. I'm not sorry I put you in this with us. Another slide, a ledger page I recognized from our system, except ours didn't have the annotations he showed, tiny letters marking which donor was a cutout, which invoice hid a shipment, which rounding error disguised a payment to a name in a country that swallows names. The picture wasn't grainy or speculative. It was math with fingerprints. He explained the 3.5-year bleed. The murder that changed him. The decision to stay inside the river and learn its bends. Evidence isn't enough, he said softly. It has to be arranged so even a liar hears it and knows it's true. A progress bar appeared for a second, files syncing to the drive Ethan had left by the keyboard. Everything we have, Graham said. Audit trails, call logs, courier scans, board votes that match the moon's pull, because the moon moves tide and greed obeys tide. Your approvals. Your questions. They seal the timeline. He swallowed hard. This will end them if we survive long enough to push the button. He leaned forward, and the camera picked up the bruise near his temple. 2 rules for you, he said. Protect Lily. Don't mistake fear for wisdom. His eyes softened, the way I'd only seen once, when he signed off on my flexible hours for school pickup without a speech. There's a way out that doesn't ask you to die brave. Take it if you must. But if you still have breath and want this finished, Ethan knows how. The video ended on his face as if he meant to say one more thing and didn't get the chance. The screen went black. My reflection hovered there, woman, mother, nobody special, holding a choice that tasted like metal. I sat back and felt my heart slow to an honest rhythm. Governor Marcus Lang. Not a rumor. Not a reach. A fact that would resist being spoken in certain rooms because some truths are too heavy to throw without breaking windows. Could I carry it? Did I have a right not to? Ethan stepped closer, careful not to wake Lily. He didn't ask if I was okay. He asked if I understood. I nodded. Understanding is not comfort, it's calibration. There's more, he said, and laid a folder on the table like a priest setting down bread. Inside were cross-reference spreadsheets, photographs of warehouse bays, shipping manifests that aligned with election cycles, emails where donations became deliveries with the right subject line. He showed me how the dormant account functioned like a lung: inhale, hold, exhale, time to press conferences and tragedy. He showed me the front charities whose board members rotated in and out of Lang's orbit and somehow always found their way back to the same Gulf Bank. It was meticulous and obscene. Math shouldn't make you want to shower. This did. Why tell me everything? I asked, voice thin and steadier than I felt. Because you're already in it, he said. People die confused. We don't do that here. A small sound cut the room in two. Lily turned in her sleep and sighed, a sound like a door easing closed in a quiet house. I pressed my palm to my sternum, grounding myself to bones. Mothers get good at holding two realities, fear and function, without spilling either. Graham's last line stuck to my ribs. Don't mistake fear for wisdom. Was running wise? Was fighting brave or naive? Would you have taken the out or the wheel? Ethan powered down the laptop and slid one drive into a steel case with a latch that clicked like a lock on a cell. We're at the edge, he said, eyes on the door, not the screen. You and Lily can vanish. We can also push this to places that won't allow it to be buried. Both paths cost. The farmhouse creaked once as the wind leaned harder. A sensor on the comms rig blinked, just one pulse, then settled. My breath held, then released. The night pressed closer around the walls, not hostile, not kind, just waiting to see who he would be. I looked at my daughter. Then I looked at the files. Fear didn't leave. It stepped aside for something larger. Tell me the plan, I said, and somewhere outside, on a road no map bothered with, a distant engine rose and fell like a warning I wasn't ready to hear yet. Would you have opened the door to the next step? The first hit rattled the window frame like a fist on a metal door. Not a knock. A test. Ethan's eyes flicked to the map wall, then to me. He didn't say, get down. He didn't have to. A second impact followed, closer, harder, then the quick stutter of feet in wet gravel. Lily jerked awake. I slid in front of her without thinking, one arm across her chest, my other hand finding the robot before it fell. The house took a breath, then the night exhaled bullets against reinforced glass. The sound was a steel pan getting hammered by rain. Ethan moved like he'd rehearsed this room 100 times. A panel under the table popped, and a rifle rose from a hidden cradle with a soft mechanical sigh. No heroics, no pose. He checked the sight, cracked the window shield 2 inches, and answered the dark in 3 controlled bursts. The smell hit carbon and cold metal, sharp as pennies on the tongue. Shadows sprinted between the pines' sleek armor, visors, perfect spacing. Not amateurs. Not here to scare. A radio voice carried across the yard, flattened by the wind, advance left, breach rear. My skin went cold in layers. Back hatch. Now. Ethan's voice stayed level. He stepped to the hallway and fired again, then slammed a bar across the rear door. Boots hammered the porch. A breaching tool bit into wood, chew, pause like a wolf at bone. Lily's fingers locked around mine. Quiet game. I breathed in her ear, mouth to hair. She nodded, eyes huge, already brave. The rug near the pantry looked wrong because I knew it well. I yanked it back. A flush steel plate waited under the boards, clean and oiled. I found the inset ring, lifted, and the trapdoor rose on gas struts with a whisper. Cold air climbed up from below, concrete and old dust, the smell of a basement that expected us. Ethan shoved a heavy cabinet across the kitchen like it weighed nothing. "Down," he said, never looking away from the hall. 2 rungs, then step sideways. "Don't jump." It was instructions for a fire drill, not a firefight. My heartbeat matched his sentences. We descended into gray. The ladder rocked once under our weight, then settled. I eased Lily onto packed earth and turned as a flash rolled through the room above, white heat, then a dull, body-shaking thud. Dust sifted from the joists like flour through a sieve. Lily flinched, small and silent. I pulled her close and counted her breaths to keep mine steady. A second blast was further off, a decoy or a mistake. The floor vibrated again, then went still. Above, the house made the creaking, settling sounds of wood remembering it was wood. No more shots. No more boots. Just the faint ring in my ears and the blood in my wrists. Ethan dropped through the opening last, one hand on the rifle, the other pulling the hatch down soft until the basement swallowed the ceiling. A seam of light vanished. He spun a wheel on a reinforced door I hadn't seen, then slid it closed until the world became bunker. The space was narrow but organized. 2 bunks, a metal workbench with neatly labeled drives, a compact generator, crates stenciled with numbers, a red phone on the wall like a relic from a different war. 2 emergency lanterns threw a calm yellow over steel. We listened. Silence shaped itself into meaning. Ethan crouched by a vent and tilted it open a hair. He smelled the air like a hunter testing wind. His shoulders dropped one notch. He looked at me and touched 2 fingers to his own chest, then pointed outward, then down. "We're alive." They pulled back, "Stay low." I nodded once. Lily's lips moved around a whisper I couldn't hear. I smoothed her hair with a hand that finally shook now that shaking wouldn't kill us. "You did perfect," I mouthed. Her chin lifted, small and fierce. The robot's cardboard wings bent into new creases. "Armor." The red phone rang. The sound wasn't loud, but in that sealed room it cut straight through bone. 1 clean bell, then another, then a third. Ethan watched the ceiling. I watched the phone. On the 4th ring, I lifted the receiver because not answering felt louder. Static breathed. Then Graham's voice stitched itself through the line, frayed, compressed, alive. I closed my eyes just once. "Ethan kept you alive," he said, as if reading my inventory of gratitude. "The team believes the explosion took the house. They're clearing debris. You have maybe 90 minutes before a secondary sweep." His words came in measured clicks, like he was rationing strength and syllables. "Graham," I started, but he pressed on. "Listen. You can vanish now. There's a kid in locker B south wall, gray case, cash, IDs, routes that avoid cameras. You can take the out. No shame. Or," his breath caught. He made the pause count. "Or you help end them. Ethan has the package ready. The cascade will make burying this impossible. Once you trigger it, there is no undo." I looked at Lily. She traced the edge of the robot's cape with her thumb, focused and calm in that children's way that stabs you with pride. I looked at the drives on the bench, neat and patient. Fear and purpose stood on either side of me like tall, stubborn brothers waiting for me to pick one. "Do you hear me?" Graham asked, softer now. "You have an hour and a half. After that, windows close." "I hear you," I said, and my voice surprised me. It sounded like someone who had already started moving. The line clicked once, metallic, final. The phone went dead in my hand. The room felt smaller and bigger at the same time. Ethan opened the gray locker without comment. Inside, everything Graham promised sat ready. Burner IDs, unmarked bills, a folded map with routes drawn in pencil, not ink. On the bench, a hardened laptop waited, its screen dark, its single key glowing like an eye that had decided to trust me. Outside, tires hissed over wet dirt, receding. Somewhere above, a bird called like it had slept through the war and was annoyed at the noise. Time settled into the shape of a countdown I could feel in my teeth. Would you disappear with your child, or press the key and let the world in? I set the phone back in its cradle and looked at Ethan. He looked back like a mirror that doesn't lie. The second hand on the wall clock ticked once, then again, each click a small door swinging shut behind us. I closed the locker on our exit life and chose the other door. The room studied around that choice. Ethan watched my face until the doubt left it, then nodded once like a medic checking a pulse. Blood had seeped through his sleeve in a dark oval. He peeled the fabric back, hissed, and wrapped it tighter with a strip of gauze from a tin. No theatrics. He bled like a man paying a bill, not asking for credit. We work fast, he said, voice even. 90 minutes is a lie. Assume 60. The bunker felt smaller after that. The generator's hum turned into a clock. I moved to the workbench. Folders stamped with federal seals sat in clean rows. Drives labeled in neat block letters waited like keys. Cross-reference spreadsheets were clipped together with notes in Ethan's square handwriting. It wasn't chaos. It was a finished sentence missing its period. He opened the hardened laptop. The screen blinked to life with a plain interface, no wallpaper, no mercy. A satellite modem blinked green, then red, then settled on a stubborn yellow that felt like a dare. Ethan clipped a thin wire to a ceiling antenna and adjusted it a fraction, the way a safecracker listens with fingertips. Here's the route, he said, keeping it simple. Newsrooms with automatic ingest. Law enforcement mirrors. International courts that never sleep. Everything hits at once. Even if one door closes, 20 open. He pointed to a single prompt in the center of the screen. One key. The cascade starts. No stop button. I glanced at Lily. She was at the bunk with a pencil nub, sketching a tiny cape on her cardboard robot like a seamstress on a deadline. Her jaw set the way mine does when I make rent on a bad month. The sight studied me better than any speech. Ethan entered a passphrase so long it looked like a paragraph. A new window appeared, asking for an authorizing credential I recognized and hated my own. He slid a secure fob toward me. You touched their vein, he said softly. Let your touch end it. My hands didn't shake. They were too busy. I slotted the fob, breathed once, and watched the cursor wait like an eye that already knew my answer. I typed the code I use only when it matters. The box accepted it with a quiet chime. The pipeline mapped itself in blue lines that branched and doubled. Names I knew. Names I didn't. 3 continents. 7 agencies. A dozen newsrooms that write fast and lawyer faster. The scale wasn't grand, it was precise. Ethan's radio whispered a ghost of traffic from far away, weather updates, a trucker complaining about ice, a burst of encrypted static that made him tilt his head. Sweep teams regrouping, he murmured. They'll want confirmation. We keep our noise low. He set a small timer on the bench without drama. 58 minutes. A number that made my teeth hurt. Ready? He asked, not rushing the syllable. I laid my palm flat on the metal and felt the faint vibration of the generator through the workbench. Fear stood beside me like an old friend making a case. Courage didn't argue. It just held my elbow. Would you trade a safer life for a truer one? I pressed the key. Nothing exploded. No orchestra. Just a cursor that leaped, a progress bar that appeared, and a burst of new windows that blossomed like clean fires. Files began to split and verify, each chunk stamped, hashed, and flung to a destination I could name in my bones but never visit. The room's air changed the way air changes right before rain. 21%. 34. A stall at 37 that made my breath catch and hold. Ethan adjusted the antenna a hair and the number jumped like a shocked bird. 49. 56. The generator coughed, recovered, and went steady again. He gave it a pat like an old dog. I found myself narrating in my head, the way I do during long nights with spreadsheets, each line a small gate that either opens or doesn't. Over my shoulder, Lily climbed down with the robot and set it near the laptop like a talisman. 2 capes, she whispered. In case one gets wet. Her voice knocked something loose in my chest and put it back better. 68%. A newsroom handshake confirmed with a green dot. A court server accepted a block like a sober friend taking your keys. A federal database lit up with an intake bar that didn't blink. Somewhere in the world, hard drives were waking to the weight of names that had never been said out loud in the same sentence. Ethan watched the ceiling vent and the timer at the same time. 41 minutes. They'll circle back, he said, not to scare me, just to keep the math honest. If they see smoke, They'll sift it. We give them ash. The red phone stayed quiet. Good. Quiet meant we were no one's first priority for 10 more minutes. I shifted my weight and felt the ache bloom in my lower back, the one I always blame on old chairs and long days. Fear tried again. It asked for the out. I heard it and let it pass. 79%. 85. The bar paused again at 87 while one branch argued with a firewall that thought it could still win. Ethan tapped a different route. The system smiled, just a flicker, and opened. 91. Outside, something small moved across the ground above us, fox, raccoon, maybe wind playing with loose tin. The bunker held its breath and let it go. 94%. The clock said 31 minutes, then 30, then 29. My mouth was dry in a way water doesn't fix. I swallowed anyway and tasted iron, adrenaline, and the weird sweetness of decision after doubt. He put a hand flat on the bench near mine, not touching, close enough to be an anchor. Almost, he said, like a coach, like a friend, like the voice that gets you through the last 30 seconds of a fire drill when the smoke is simulated, but the panic isn't. 97. The laptop's fan climbed a note. A new window opened and began stamping digital receipts, chain of custody, source checks, redundancy confirmations that would survive any courtroom that still respected facts. The cascade wasn't loud. It was relentless. I thought of the picture of Lily outside her school, the bent corner where an unknown thumb had pressed too hard. I pictured that hand realizing, somewhere, somehow, that their river had reversed direction. The image carried me the last inch. 99%. The generator flickered once, a hiccup that made my heart lurch. Ethan's eyes snapped to the fuel gauge. He reached for the backup crank with calm hands that moved like a metronome. The red phone gave a single, testing tick, then fell quiet again. Somewhere above, a distant engine rose and faded like a question asked in the wrong language. One more breath. One more second. One more line turning from pending to permanent. I didn't blink. The bar hit 100 like a door slotting into place. No fanfare. Just a soft chime and a new window that said what I needed, delivered. Mirrored. Immutable. The word immutable felt like a spine growing in the room. Ethan exhaled, long and quiet. He didn't smile. He checked the vent and the timer and finally the laptop again, like a pilot landing in crosswind. It's out, he said. They can't pull it back. The red phone rang on the second breath. Graham's voice arrived thinner than before, but carried something I hadn't heard yet, relief that sounded like sleep. He'd been watching for the lights to flip green on his end. You did it, he said, not wasting syllables. It's everywhere that matters. He listed 3 places by initials only, then coughed. They can bury bodies. They can't bury this. I asked if he was safe. He ignored the question the way people do when the answer is complicated. In 1 hour, he said, you'll see it. A beat softer. I'm proud of you, Maya. The line clicked and went to dead air like a candle snuffed with fingers. The laptop began printing digital receipts, automated acknowledgments from places that don't blink. A green dot hopped across the screen like a heartbeat on a monitor. Somewhere above us, a vehicle idled and drifted away. The world was moving while we were still. Then the bunker filled with noise that wasn't ours. Ethan's radio caught an open-frequency news audio, compressed and tinny, leaking from a driver who liked his updates loud. A voice read the words twice to make them real, sealed indictments, coordinated raids. Sources confirmed the arrest of Static chewed the name, then gave it back whole. Governor Marcus Lang, detained at a private terminal while attempting to board a chartered flight. It landed without echo. Facts don't need echo. My throat stung anyway. Screens don't love us, but they tell the weather. Ethan toggled a tiny TV from a crate, the kind meant for storms and long nights. No cable, just an antenna. It found a local station, then hopped to national. Banners screamed breaking. Anchors leaned into their voices. Investigative files received by multiple outlets at once. Law enforcement confirms concurrent operations. Protests forming outside state offices. The ticker crawled names, then numbers, then dates that matched the ledger in my bones. One feed cut to a shaky phone video, a private hangar, A midnight blue jet with a crooked ladder, men in windbreakers moving with purpose and paperwork. A figure guided away under a gray coat that didn't look like contrition. Cameras flashed the way thunderstorms flash, too bright to mean comfort. It was ugly. It was necessary. The red phone stayed silent. The generator leveled to a purr. Lily pressed against my side, watching the tiny screen because children know when history is happening even if they don't know the words. "Is that the bad man?" she whispered. I didn't say his name. I said, "He can't hurt us tonight." It was the truth I could afford. Ethan got busy in the practical way hope makes possible. He made a call through a channel I didn't try to understand. He listened, nodded twice, said only copy and 2, then hung up. "We're moving," he told me. "An escort will meet us a mile north. No lights. Keep your steps inside mine." A part of me reached for the gray locker where the out still waited cash IDs, exit routes drawn in pencil. I closed it again. We had changed the weather. The out had changed its shape. We surfaced through the trapdoor into a house that looked like a stage set after the actors left. Glass beads on the floor. A wall clock stopped 4 minutes ago. Air with the metallic tang of heat and noise. We moved like water, touching only what we had to. The night outside felt wider than before, like fear had been pushed off the land a few inches and didn't like it. The sky over the ridge pulsed with a distant city's headache. Here, only stars. We walked the tree line and then beyond it, boots quiet, breaths counting. A dark SUV appeared from nothing and became shape. 2 figures. No introductions. One woman with a small med kit glanced at Ethan's sleeve and tightened the wrap without commentary. The other passed a folded envelope to me, program details clipped to the front with a plain metal binder. New names. New school. New rules. We didn't debate it in the dark. We got in and let the night close the door. The drive was a slow breath thing. Dirt to asphalt, asphalt to county road. Radio silent. We passed a gas station with all its lights on and no customers, the kind of lonely that only exists after midnight. My body learned again how to sit without clenching. My mind tried not to write the next 10 years all at once. An hour later, we turned onto a service lane that wasn't on the map and climbed to a cabin that kept its promises. No neighbors. A fence disguised as good manners. Cameras small as beetles. Inside smelled like cedar and new paint, the scent of beginnings staged carefully by people who plan for endings. They swept, they checked, they left. Doors locked with a hum that felt like someone putting a hand on your back and saying breathe. I tucked Lily into a bed that was too big for her and just right for my relief. She held her robot like a passport and fell asleep before I finished smoothing the blanket. Ethan stood in the doorway long enough to make sure the room would keep her. Then he eased the door until the latch kissed shut. In the small kitchen, he poured water that tasted like nothing, a gift after a day of metal and fear. He said a few things about rotations and contact protocols. He didn't say where he would sleep. Men like him sleep near doors. I tried the couch and found it kinder than most. My muscles let go in stages, as if my body didn't trust my decision to rest. The TV murmured a late-night anchor trying to land the plane of a chaotic day. Words washed through. Hearings scheduled. Resignations tendered. International partners requesting coordination. Somewhere in there, reporter said a sentence that snapped something tight and then loose. A single operations coordinator's audit note appears again and again in the evidence. I didn't feel big. I felt exactly my size. A mother with a spreadsheet brain who refused to blink at the wrong moment. The room heard that and went warm. Slumber comes slowly to people who've practiced vigilance. It arrived anyway. For the first time in months, I slept, heavy and unbroken, with my palms open and the ceiling harmless above me. Morning would bring questions I couldn't answer yet, new names, new routines, a child who would want truth scaled to her heart. When she asks if the bad people can still find us, what would you say? Dawn came in soft and honest, a pale band over the hills that made the frost shine like powdered sugar on the fence rails. The cabin's heater clicked alive. Somewhere in the trees, a single bird practiced the same note until it sounded brave. Lily padded out in socks and climbed into my lap without ceremony. Her hair was sleep-warm, Her whisper felt like a small hand knocking. She asked if the bad people could still find us. I told her the truth scaled to her 8-year-old heart. The people who were hunting us had been stopped, and grown-ups who know how to stand guard were standing guard now. She nodded, as if bravery were a simple equation she could solve, then pressed her cardboard robot into my palm for backup. I promised to keep it on me until the end of the day. Ethan tapped once on the doorframe, his version of a good morning, and gave a brief update in sentences that didn't waste sugar. Warrants multiplied overnight. Accounts froze. The news said cooperating witnesses, which is how power admits it's tired. He told me our relocation packets were finalized. New names. New school. A clinic that already knew Lily's allergies. He didn't ask if we were going to use them. He knew we would, at least for a while. A coded message arrived mid-breakfast, delivered like a weather report. Graham was alive in federal custody. Secure, for now, Ethan said. Relief moved through me like heat finding cold hands. I set the mug down so it wouldn't shake. We spent the morning learning our new edges. The case officer on the encrypted line had a voice that sounded like traffic cones and clear exits. She explained cover habits the same way a piano teacher explains scales, unglamorous and life-saving. No social media, staggered errands, the same corner table if you can help it. Say thank you without using names. Keep routine, but not too much. She asked if Lily's favorite color had to stay purple. I told her yes, some truths aren't negotiable. Before lunch, a local station replayed the same clip 3 times, laying in a gray coat moving between men in heavier coats, jaw set, eyes doing math that would never balance again. Commentators spoke in careful steps, like new hikers near a ledge, task forces, tribunals, international pressure. None of it undid the fact that a photograph of my child had been used as a threat. Closure does not erase, it organizes. That would have to be enough. I wrote our new names on sticky notes and practiced signing them with a calm hand. The letters looked like borrowed shoes at first, stiff, a little too clean. After the 5th try, they softened. Lily practiced hers too and added a tiny crown over the eye because of course she did. Ethan registered no opinion about crowns and checked the door sensors twice. We walked the perimeter after lunch. The cold made our breath into small clouds. The sun turned the snow into knives you could trust. I counted seconds between the camera blinks because counting is how I quiet rooms. Lily used a stick to draw capes on the ground. Ethan adjusted a lens and pretended not to notice that she'd sketched one on him, too. Back inside, I found the envelope with the cash, the burner IDs, the map with pencil routes, and put it in the top cabinet, not the bottom. We might never use it. We might grab it in a rush someday. Either way, I wanted the choice to live at eye level. The dazed. The heater clicked again. My phone, the new one that isn't mine, stayed silent, which felt like a kindness. I made soup that tasted better than it should have in a place that isn't ours. Lily ate 2 bowls and announced the robot was now officially Captain Evidence. I saluted. She grinned like a sunrise with teeth. When dusk folded over the hills, I sat at the small table and wrote 3 lists. What we lost, what we saved, what we learned. The first list was heavy home, familiar streets, the version of me that thought audit meant paperwork, not protection. The second list made me cry, Lily's breath, our ordinary mornings, my stubborn sense that rules can still mean safety if we insist. The third list was short and permanent. Fear and wisdom are cousins, but not twins. Small questions break big things. Love is a strategy if you let it be. Was this revenge, or just a mother refusing to blink when blinking would have been easier? Night came quiet. Ethan took first watch on the porch with a jacket zipped high and a thermos that steamed like a train from an old movie. Lily slept early, one hand on her robot, mouth open in kid peace. I stood in the doorway longer than necessary and watched her breathe. It felt like proof the world could be repaired in pieces. Before I slept, I opened the window a crack and let the cold in, just enough to remind my lungs they were still mine. Somewhere out there, headlines were turning into hearings, and hearings were turning into law, and people who had practiced smiling into cameras were learning how to answer questions under oath. Somewhere in there, my note, dormant account reactivated. Transfer unusual. Please provide support. Appeared again and again, a small stone in a large machine. I won't pretend I became fearless. I didn't. I became precise. I protect my child. I tell the truth even when my hands shake. I ask the small questions that make Rot look for a new home. Tomorrow, I'll practice a new name at a new desk in a new town. But when I tuck Lily in and she asks who we are, I'll tell her the only answer that matters. We are the kind of people who look at the ledger and don't look away. I kept her breathing. The truth did the rest.